We're on our last unit of the year. We're looking at Reconstruction period. Next week, we're going to be doing an intense review, 4-star. Remember, guys, you only have about 12 or, um, sorry, you have about 12 days before your actual star test. So we got a lot of work to put into it to make sure we're ready to go. But this week, we're going to finish off our notes. Next week, we're going to have a whole week of review for the star. So let's look at the Reconstruction period. The first thing we'll look at today, we're going to look at the problems. What was going on in the South following the Civil War that caused problems for these new freedmen, these people who were these former slaves who were free following the Civil War. So first, the main problem is letting Southern states back to the Union, and this was a big deal because you had a nation, the Confederate States of America, the Southern states, who is fighting against America. You can't just let everyone back in. You got to make sure that they understand that these actions can't be done. So the first thing is we see the Reconstruction Act, and it basically divided the Southern states into 5 military districts. You can see down here at the bottom. And what it basically did was that these 5 districts were controlled by military rule, and these military governors would make sure that all these northern policies that will be in place, the Southerners respected and enforced. The second major question was how to rebuild the Southern economy. And basically, the economy was all based on slave labor. That's what it was. It was a system of agriculture. So what developed after Reconstruction was a system of sharecropping, and basically what that is that former enslaved people worked on these worked on worked on the farms, but instead of being slaves, they would get paid, but they never got paid enough to pay back whoever owned the land for their supplies, their seeds, their room and board. They never could pay back. So they were perpetually in debt. Every time they made a little bit of money, they had to give it all away because that was how much it cost to work the land. So basically, even though they were free in a sense, they really weren't because they were in debt constantly. So basically, it was like an unofficial slavery. Okay, it's question time, guys. Teacher's going to pause the video and go over the question with you. All right, I'm back. So next we're going to look at how are the needs of these former enslaved peoples. What's going on? So the North realized that there is these problems. How can we protect these newly freed citizens? Before they were slaves, and now they're changing the entire way the Southern society was structured. So the North created the Freedmen's Bureau, and the Bureau's chief focus was provide food, Medicare, establish justice, resettlement, basically provide for the safety and the well-being of these new freedmen. And what the main goal was try to educate them and change their position in life, make them equal to the Anglo population. And the way they focused on this was schools. They built over 1,000 schools to try to educate the population. And how they extended citizenship to these people. The amendments are going to be very important because the main things you remember is the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. Now, how you can remember that, there's an easy way. We're going to go over this next week. But remember, the only people who can vote are free citizens. So free citizens vote. 13th Amendment granted freedom. 14th Amendment granted citizenship. 15th Amendment granted voting rights. Now, how they extend citizenship to these former slaves? The 4th Amendment guaranteed the citizenship to these former slaves, and the 15th Amendment gave them voting rights. But the South constantly was trying to create a way around these two amendments, try to fix it so that these people could not get their rights. They tried to go around the system by creating some very sneaky laws, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So these are the laws the Southerners tried to do to get around the 14th, 15th Amendment. First was black codes. And basically, black codes were these laws in the South that were worded specifically to limit opportunities for African Americans. They were planned so that they could sneak around the 13th, 14th, or the 14th, 15th Amendment. They didn't necessarily directly attack voting rights or citizenship, but they restricted African Americans in a way that limited their rights as freemen. Next was Jim Crow laws. And basically, they bypassed the laws created by radical Republicans. So, these policies were really the ones that focused on voting rights. And they tried to restrict the voting rights of African Americans. And the main way they did this was through poll taxes and through literacy tests, which literacy tests aren't like a star test or anything. They're made to be impossible to pass. And the only ones who get literacy tests were the African Americans and the poor whites, because they wanted to eliminate both of these voting rights. And lastly, the Ku Klux Klan. This was a secret terrorist organization that's main goal was to cause terror in those African American communities who were trying to go out and vote. And their main goal was to stop African Americans from voting. Because to have power, you vote. So if you can eliminate the voting potential of a group, you eliminate their power. All right, another question time. I'm going to pause. Let the teacher ask you these questions. I'll be back in a second. All right, last, let's look at the political and social divisions. After Reconstruction ended, the Democratic Party still controlled Southern politics for over 100 years. And they were able to do this following the Jim Crow laws and these black codes. Even after Reconstruction, these stayed in place. And we changed from being a society of slavery to a society of segregation, where there is separate and unequal facilities. And after this, we see a clear division between Northern and Southern societies. And it's because of Reconstruction that we see this division. It's because of Reconstruction that we say y'all and have a different type of accent down here in the South. But there were some penetrations, and these penetrations of the North to the South cause a lot of conflict. And these are both scallywags and carpetbaggers. Scallywags were they were technically in the South, but they weren't viewed as Southern people as being really Southerners. Scallywags were Southerners who worked for the Republicans, and they used it to gain power. They tried to bring these new economic and social changes. But once they did that, the Southerners felt that they weren't real Southerners anymore. And that's really significant because you can see a coalition develop between what is an actual Southerner at this time. Carpetbaggers are named for the luggage they carried. They're basically Northerners who went to the South and became involved in new state politics, just like the Scallywags that gained political power. So most of the Southerners, the old Southerners elite, they saw both the Scallywags and Carpetbaggers trying to profit on their misfortune. And because they're profiting on this misfortune, they're seen as negative characters. All right, guys, so that's the end of our lecture today. These lectures are going to be very short because you really don't need to know a ton about Reconstruction on the test, but you need to know some key facts. That's why we're going over these. So you're going to work independently on learning with graphical organizers on page 249, and you're going to answer the following 4 sections: sectionalism, Dred Scott decision, issue of slavery in the new territories, and founding of the Republican parties. As always, if you have any questions about the PowerPoint, please let your teacher know, and Mr. Parkman will go back over those. All right? I'll see you tomorrow.